I was broken when duty called me to minister those less fortunate than myself. So maybe I'm no Florence Nightingale, and maybe in light that everything happened with Piper and Jody, I'm not qualified to do much anymore. The fact is, at 39, with a gap in my employment history spanning the better part of a technical revolution, I'm not qualified to do much anymore. But don't get the fact that anyone can be a caregiver. It takes patience, fortitude, and a background check. The bulk of what I learned about being a licensed caregiver, I learned from the Fundamentals of Caregiving, a 20-hour night course I attended along with 14 middle-aged women. I learned caregiving is just a job, a series of tasks I am paid to perform. As outlined in the client service plan, binding contract addressing everything from dietary restrictions to med schedules to toiletry preferences. Sometimes that's a lot to remember. So the Department of Human and Social Services has devised dozens of helpful mnemonics to help facilitate effective caregiving. Aloha. Ask, listen, observe, help, ask again. I had a head full of these mnemonics and a crisp certification when, 3 days after my interview, the Department of Social and Human Services lined me up with my first potential client, Trevor Conklin. Not everyone knows what it's like to be in a wheelchair. Nobody knows more than Trevor. Trevor was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy when he was young. His dad left him, and he's been in a wheelchair his whole life, having to be taken care of 24/7. Ben Benjamin becomes his new caregiver. Ben Benjamin has had a pretty hard life and just trying to forget the past about what happened between his wife and his kids. Trevor learns a lot after having been caregived by Ben Benjamin. Ben Benjamin starts a map of places of everywhere Trevor wants to visit, going from the Double Dumper, a 2-story outhouse in Gaze, Illinois, to Hitler's Stamp Collection. This is a road trip that they both encounter in The Revised Fundamentals of Caregiving by Jonathan Evans. 4 months after my interview, with Trevor's mom, I spent anywhere from 40 to 60 hours a week with Trevor. And sometimes I just wanted to say, aren't you tired of doing the same 10 things over and over again? The waffles, the Weather Channel, the mall, the matinee on Thursday. Don't you ever want to free yourself from this compulsive routine and go out in a blaze of glory? Or at least something besides fish and chips every time we go to the Red Lobster? June 12th, 2007. Begins like pretty much any other normal day in the Benjamin household. Toilets flushing, footprints up and down the carpeted stairs, Buster scratching at the door to get out, Piper walking into the kitchen as the bright red cape drags on the linoleum. Yes, my child is wearing a cape, and that's pretty common in this household. On cue, Jody rumbles into the kitchen, barefoot, despite the grief I've given him a girl's name. I should have named him Sylvester the cat. To hear him speak, I can't understand a word he says. I tell him to get on his shoes and get out to the car, as my lovely wife, Janet, takes him to school. But of course, I never said these things to Trevor, because in spite of the burnout, I still cling to my professional motto. Professional, reliable, objective, or pro. Trevor has always been asking me about my life. Are you married? No. Any kids? No. It's always bothered me until one day he kept asking me and pushing me until I just wanted to scream. But I quietly sat there and made his waffles for the 80th freaking time. The next day after I cooled off, me and Trevor worked on the map for 90 minutes. The map was my idea, inspired by one of those American backroad type of travel channel shows where the host goes to some rotting seaside burg and sees how saltwater taffy is made. Except in this particular show, the host goes to somewhere like the 2-story outhouse in Gaze, Illinois, or some deep dark cave where the hoe cake was invented. The map was a collection of dumb, or as I and some others would say, unique landmarks Trevor's always wanted to visit. We started the map early in spring as a sort of survey of North American roadside attractions, from the Double Dumper to Hitler's Stamp Collection. But I learned that when I kept pushing Trevor to do things he didn't want to do, it annoyed him. I know it makes him feel uncomfortable. I can tell by the flushing in his cheeks as he turns his head back to the television. He stares straight ahead as the colors continue to get deeper in his cheeks. I know I had to stop pushing. You don't understand. Everything you think, every relationship you've ever taken for granted, every plan or possibility you've ever hatched can be stripped from you in an instant. Sooner or later, something will happen. Even if you glance over your shoulder in time to glimpse, you manage to drop your groceries and throw your head in the long of destruction, you will be powerless. But the car will keep on rolling. And you watch helplessly as the back wheels pin your daughter's red cape to the pavement, even as she reaches desperately to save her brother, who disappears behind the rear bumper. You hear his wailing as you attempt to wedge your leg and stop the car. Instead, you watch everything you love most in the world be dragged over at the edge of an incline with a horrible scraping. When you hear the sickening metallic of an impact, you begin to forget everything you knew. I never told Trevor about my past for a reason, and that reason is I wanted to forget it. I didn't want to think about the fact that my children had died and my wife had left me. For the next couple of weeks, I tried to convince Elsa, Trevor's mom, to let us go on this road trip. See, she was going on a week-long business trip, and so I thought this would be the perfect time to get Trevor out of the house and experience the joy of life, and that there's more life from that chair. After a couple of weeks, she finally agreed. So we got everything planned. I rented a van that could fit his wheelchair. We got Trevor's medications, we got all of his machines, and the car ready to go. And the next thing I knew, Trevor was sitting there, eating beef jerky for the first time as I asked him, "Are you ready?"